So hi, I'm Catherine Walsh, and I'm here with the Sport and Peace Media Center at SCAR. Today we're going to be talking to Soolmaz Abu Ali, a PhD student at SCAR, and she's going to be talking to us a little about her research and thoughts regarding martial arts. So hi Soolmaz, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from?
Sure. So I'm originally Iranian, and I left Iran when I was 3 years old, and post-Islamic revolution, and from there, at the time my family consisted of my mom, my dad, and myself, and we moved to a couple different countries, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, and finally we ended up in Canada, which is where I spent most of my childhood. And for the past probably 15 years or so, I've been in the Virginia area in the US. So.
Okay, great. So how did you get involved in martial arts, and what practice do you do?
So I train in a traditional style of martial arts called Shotokan Karate. And Shotokan Karate is rooted in a concept called Budo. And Budo is a holistic type of development where in that it uses the mind, body, and spirit. And it says that in order to improve in that way as a person, karate and your training is a way of life. So your development never stops, your training never stops, and your training is really a framework in which you can constantly practice on improving these three items. So that's the philosophy behind the traditional martial arts. Technique-wise, Shotokan Karate has about 50% hands, 50% legs. All martial arts is really, at the essence, about prevention. We never start our training with an offensive technique. It's always a defensive technique, which implies that martial arts is actually about prevention, not about creating conflict. It's about using every means you can to prevent conflict from happening and being aware that stepping here might be a dangerous situation so that you can avoid it. So it gives you that awareness. But it's also about if you had no choice and you had to defend yourself, martial arts is about empowering and equipping a smaller person to defend against a bigger person. So in Shotokan Karate, we use, like I was saying, 50% hands, 50% legs. And what I think is special about it is that it utilizes, technique-wise, is it utilizes the floor, utilizes your alignment in your body to create the maximum best technique that you can execute. But it also transfers the energy at the end of your technique. It's really not about size or power or brute force, because if that was it, then a smaller person could never be able to engage against a bigger person. So it's again, it goes back to that holistic type of mind, body, spirit development to overcome any type of conflict that you're confronted with.
Nice. Well, you sound very knowledgeable and passionate about this. So how long
Yes.
have you been practicing martial arts, and can you tell us about some of your achievements?
Sure. So I've been practicing for about 15 years now,
Okay.
and I'm a USA team member. I've been a USA team member for probably about past 11, 12 years. And I compete, I'm a 7-time US national champion, and I also compete internationally. And I've placed anywhere from first to third internationally, and I'm also the first American athlete to place second at an Invitational World Cup Championship.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know you're a PhD student here at SCAR, so
Yes.
just to bring us back to that, how did you come to SCAR? What brought you here?
Well, SCAR is a special place. I think so too. So it's what attracted me to the program was really its emphasis on the theoretical development behind practice. I feel like, for example, my practice has been in karate, has been a way to empower me, but without the theoretical knowledge, or let's take a better example, for me to do a technique, I can practice it and practice it. Okay, I may get better at doing it well, and I may get better at doing it bad through all the practice. But if I don't understand the theory behind how to do that technique, how to engage the floor, what's involved in that, what are the dynamics, if I don't understand it, then my execution and practice probably will not be, well, specifically in a martial arts frame, I know will not be as effective, will not be my best technique that I can do. And so I feel like, you know, this example transfers into real world applications too. I feel that this program gives me that theoretical background that I can mix with my practice to make what I do in this world most effective as possible.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So what do you hope to accomplish with your research?
So specifically what I'm looking at is martial arts as an empowerment tool. I feel that my practice has empowered me as a woman, and it's empowered me as a person to really believe that whatever I want to do, that not only do I have a choice to go after it, but I know what it takes to make it succeed. I know that it takes discipline, I know that it takes sacrifice, I know that it takes a vision, and I know that it takes passion. And so I feel empowered within through my martial arts framework. And what I would like to do is transfer that knowledge and really, I guess, pay it forward in a way to others, female or male, but to the larger global context, to say that this is one way, one framework that we can use to gain empowerment, to gain a sense of empowerment. And what I'd love to do is through that sense of empowerment, because one could argue, well, okay, you're empowered, so what? Is to take that empowerment and use that, particularly for women, to feel that they can serve in leadership roles in their society, despite the obstacles that might be in their way.
Wow, that's an incredible goal. So how do you envision?
It's big.
It is a big goal, but that's great. How do you envision doing that? Empowering women through martial arts?
So,
or men also, you said.
Sure. One of the ways that I would hope to do this is through a diplomatic effort and a diplomatic framework. So, for example, what would that include? There are programs like this where, particularly I think the State Department is really honing in on this, is bringing two groups of people, two nations, two cultures, two groups of people together so that they can gain an understanding of each other's cultures, of each other's viewpoints, of each other's perspectives through engaging in a sport activity.
Okay.
And so what I would, and
so diplomacy through sports.
Yes,
okay.
Sports diplomacy.
Got it.
And so through this, the goal is that two goals will come together, interact in a healthy, productive, engaging environment in the sport structure, go back to their nations or to their environments or societies, and they would use that new perspective to further engage in sports, maybe further create sport diplomacy initiatives in that way, maybe change attitudes, change perspectives, create new entities, organizations in their environment. And so I think martial arts is one way, because this is the way that I know and this is the way that it's empowered me. I feel that this is one way that I can tap into the global context, bringing two groups of people together. But one thing that I might add is incredibly crucial, especially as I'm doing more research on the topic of sport diplomacy, is the intention that we have in doing this. It's very easy for one group to feel that the other group is imposing values on them or telling them that they should be a certain way or not be a certain way. And this is not productive, and again, it's not healthy. No one walks away from that feeling good about each other, or really it would reinforce stereotypes, if anything.
So is there a way to ensure that that doesn't happen?
So this is one thing I'm looking at, and I'm
Okay.
trying to research more and more is through my doctoral program is how can we create, if two nations, if two states want to get involved,
Mhm.
how can we ensure that their intention
Right.
is really genuine in that we can focus on just a cultural cultural interaction. So how can we separate basically state interests
Mhm.
from the benefits that sport can bring, which are teamwork, discipline, physical health. For example, there's lots of programs with Israelis and Palestinians where they've never really met each other their whole life, but then they come through together in a sport activity that's structured, and they're focusing on drills that they've done to make them realize that, wow, this other person, even though they may be Palestinian or Israeli, enjoys the same kinds of things that I can do. And so this is a commonality. This has nothing to do with state interests. So how can we tap into creating an environment where it's just about this, and then give those groups tools that they can go back and create similar environments within their larger society. This is one way that, I'm not saying this is a way that we can resolve conflicts, but
Right.
it's one way that I feel that I can add to the field of to creating this peaceful world. Really, I mean, I know that sounds all cliche, peaceful world, but it's one way that we can do it.
Okay. Do you have any theories or leads on how the sports can be productive rather than bringing up issues like you talked about? Like, how do you do that? How do you make it productive and empowering and not forcing it onto another?
So, where I'm at right now is the notion of intention.
Right.
So
That's what it all comes down
that's
to.
what I feel that at this point, that's what it comes down to.
Okay.
How can, for example, states separate their interests and their intentions, separate their interests,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can have an environment that's purely about sport participation, that's purely about teamwork. For example, there was a program that I was involved with the State Department that included a group of martial arts women from Tajikistan, different martial arts. There was Shotokan, one or two people who had done Shotokan. There was Taekwondo, which is a Korean-based martial arts.
Okay.
There was boxing, wrestling. So we came together and we spent couple hours, 2 afternoons together, and it was really, the State Department had brought them over here for a period of about a week to get them to familiarize them with the American culture. This is our culture. We're introducing you to different organizations, different martial arts, coaches and athletes, to let you see how do they practice, how do they work in the sports field.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, we can get to know them. We can learn from them and their experiences, and also learn from how they view what they're seeing here, which is also very important. And so what I did was I had 2 sessions with them. One was where we're actually training together, and people think karate and they think punching and kicking each other. It's not about that. It is a self-defense. You are learning to defend yourself. So obviously you will have to practice blocks, kicking, punching, so forth. So we do that. It is a component. But what we did was, I did a drill with them, many drills. One of them was where they teamed up together. We outlined a couple of the techniques that we would do, and one person was blindfolded, and the other person was with them, and they were in charge. They would start on one end of the room and, for example, stepping in, punching to the other end of the room. And what they would do then is, one person is blindfolded, the other person would have to rely on the other one's direction. They didn't know how far they were going because we would adjust the distance. and they would just have to keep going and punching one by one, but listen to the other person so that they don't end up hitting the wall on the other end of the room.
Right.
It takes a lot to trust the other person, and so through physical activity, you're being engaged you're engaging with the other person through physical activity and exercising your ability to trust, and the other person might feel a sense of responsibility towards you, that if they don't watch out, you're going to get hurt. So there's a mutual responsibility developed between them. So this is one thing that we did. So if we can create environments like this, really structure and focus our programs, sport diplomacy programs, to do this, then I feel like we can begin to not only enjoy the experience, but perhaps use this to change attitudes and bring discussions to the table that possibly are relevant to overall issue in a country. U.S.-China ping pong diplomacy. I mean, this is huge. We've heard about this all the time.
Right.
It didn't resolve the conflict, but it happened because a U.S. team member, by accident, missed his bus and went on the Chinese team's table tennis / ping pong bus to go on the tour that they had. So that's when one member of the Chinese team and this member of the U.S. team struck up a conversation, exchanged gifts later on, and that both presidents, U.S. president, Chinese president, heard about this, and that led to an invitation for the U.S. to come to China and to get to know each other. So it was an opening. It served as a stimulus to start conversations on bigger issues. So long story short, I think sport diplomacy is a fruitful avenue toward tapping into the global context and creating really our own peace and an environment where we can start to talk about bigger issues.
Great.
For a second, and then.
So that all sounds really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today, Soolmaz. It was
Thank
really
you.
interesting hearing your perspective on how we can bring sports to bring people together throughout different cultures and different conflicts. And I look forward to hearing about your research developments on this. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on Sports and Peace Media Center, and we hope you join us next time.